Hey, what's going on? Luke here, and after the Rabbitohs game, I did a video where I talked about the Roosters and the possibility of them winning the premiership, and I said they are absolutely no chance after the Luke Keary injury, Adam Lachlan Lamb, any other injuries that could possibly happen throughout the season. However, there's been a little bit of a spanner thrown in the works because there's been talk about James Maloney making a possible return to the NRL and more importantly to the Sydney Roosters. Now, overnight, I'm recording this on Tuesday, so to make things easier, let's just say in the past round of the Super League, he's playing for the Catalans Dragons at the moment, and he just kicked a clutch field goal to win the game, and it was typical James Maloney like, just slotted it over with ease after a nice little run from the fullback. So it just shows you that even at the age of 34, it's going to be 35 this year, but it just shows that he's still got it. He might not be up to scratch compared to what he was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, or even when he left the NRL in 2019. That was his last season. Obviously, Penrith last year went with Jerome Luai over him and let him head off to Super League, leaving Jerome Luai and Nathan Cleary to steer the ship, and they did a fantastic job. And I truly believe if Maloney had stayed, I feel like Nathan Cleary wouldn't have developed into the player he was. However, I feel like Maloney also helped him develop into that player, but just in terms of them playing, the chemistry just wasn't there. We've seen Maloney form some great combinations with guys like Mitchell Pearce, Chad Townsend, Sean Johnson. He's generally made the team around him and also his halves partner a better player, but it just didn't work out for Nathan Cleary. However, I think the best time of his career, I think it was definitely at the Roosters. I think that's when he was at his peak. Went over from the Warriors, moved to the Roosters, and it's funny enough that after all these years, the Roosters are sending out an SOS to him after they had him and then got rid of him. Now, a lot of the time, there's lots of these crazy rumours that happen in the NRL, and a lot of them don't really have any merits to it. It's kind of just going, oh, well, the Roosters need a halves player. Oh, yeah, Jackson Hastings might sign him. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, well, they had him, they punted him, they're not going to sign him. Although Jackson Hastings could be a pretty good signing for the Roosters when you actually think about it. But for the Roosters, it's like they've got no salary cap space to begin with. And they're going to have to get an exemption because I'd say most of their money would be in Luke Keary, and all the talks of the Roosters having salary cap sombreros and all that sort of stuff. I feel like if they were able to land Maloney, there'd be huge question marks over it. But Maloney's already started the season at Catalans, so he would have to leave Catalans mid-season. So I don't know if there's any merit to this rumour. However, it is one that kind of does make sense because obviously Maloney is an Aussie. You'd think he'd want to come back and live in Australia. However, you hear about all these NRL players who go over to the Super League or go over and play in France and talk about how nice it is playing at Catalans. So I can see Maloney just kicking his feet back up. I'm not really having to train that hard. I mean, he's not really a renowned trainer, but I can just see him having the time of his life, living overseas, living in France, having a good time. But at the same time, I feel like he'd probably have that fire in him. Just go, oh, maybe I can just win one more premiership. Maybe I can do it with the Roosters, finish off at a club he's already been at. I think it'd be a great story for him to do it, considering after all the years of him making grand finals with every team, it didn't happen with Penrith, and then the next year after, they end up going to make the grand final. I think it would be a great story for him to come back to the Roosters and have success. However, I feel like even if they add Maloney, I don't think they're still going to be able to do it. I think Luke Keary is so essential to that side. I feel like even if you add James Maloney into the side, you know, maybe if he was partnering Luke Keary, it's a whole different story. But chucking him in there with, I don't know, Drew Hutchison or Sam Walker, whoever's going to be the halves partner, I still don't think he'd be able to get them to a premiership, especially after he's just sort of been chilling over in the Super League. They just played their first round. Chucking him straight into this Rooster side. We saw how Kyle Flanagan went. They just chucked him in there. He didn't perform. They punted him. They've already punted James Maloney before as well, so he knows all about it. But in saying that though, I think he would be a good fit. He'd be a good signing if they could land him. It's just one that I don't know how much merit it's got to it. I can't see it happening, although it would be a cool story. And it's a nice video to talk about. We can sit here and talk about James Maloney. Love talking about Jimmy Maloney, one of the better characters in the NRL. And I feel like the NRL definitely lost something when he left. A lot of the times they talk about players, like, you know, when like Jarryd Hayne went over to the NFL and, you know, Israel Folau leaves and any of the big names leave. Probably Roger Tuivasa-Sheck would be the next one. Now that he's gone rugby union, they always talk about, oh, well, you know, the NRL's going to lose so much. But I always look at it and I'm like, no, like, they're good players in that, but like, there's always going to be good players in the game. Like, there's always going to be the next Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. There's always going to be the next great player. However, there's not always going to be the next great NRL personality. And I feel like we lost a lot with James Maloney leaving, and no one's really replaced it. Like, there's a lot of guys who are trying, a lot of the YKTR boys and all that sort of stuff, doing a lot of good stuff in the media. But just having that, I don't know, just having that comedy of James Maloney, it was always nice to see, get him on the footy show. So I think in that aspect, it'd be nice to be able to get him back on TV as well, being back in Australia and back in the game. But yeah, I don't see it happening. I feel like Maloney's going to go over there, finish this season, probably retire, kick up the feet. Maybe he'll end up back on TV, but I can't see him coming back and playing in the NRL, especially at his age. I mean, he's going to be 35. I know there's lots of talks about how the Blues need James Maloney to win a series in Origin, and I'm not going to disagree with that. Obviously, the track record is we always win it with James Maloney, and when he doesn't play, we don't win. Actually, did I say always? No, I shouldn't say always, because he did lose quite a bit. But as of late, anyways, in the last couple of seasons that he played, they had a winning record with him, and then all of a sudden he leaves, and the Blues halves just completely disintegrate. And then New South Wales lose the series to the worst Queensland side ever. Anyways, I'm just rambling now. I think for the Roosters, I feel like they should just stick solid. Look, this year is going to be a shit year for them in terms of winning a premiership. So I definitely think that the goal for them was obviously winning a premiership. They had the teams to do it. They started the season off well. Obviously, they didn't play well against Rabbitohs, but I think by the end of the season, they would have been alright. They would have been raring to go. Generally, the Roosters, they start the season fairly slow and then build towards the final. So I think in that aspect, it would have been fine. They would have got through Origin, and then they would have hit their stride towards the back end of the season, and I think they would have made a dent in the finals. I don't think it's going to happen now. Obviously, with no Luke Keary, he's going to be out for quite a while. But look, who knows? Maybe Sam Walker's going to step up and play great. He's an 18-year-old, but there's been plenty of 18-year-olds who have stepped up. I don't know if he's going to be good enough to lead into a premiership. I definitely don't think he's going to be good enough to lead into a premiership, but he might be able to steer the ship around and get them into the top 8, into the top 4. You never really know with footy these days. Maybe Penrith will go down with injuries, or Eels, or some other side. So I guess you can never say never, but I think at this point, I feel like the Roosters should just, I don't know, just go with the flow, see what happens. James Maloney, they don't really need to sign anybody. Just give some of these youngsters a go. They've got the rest of the side around them that's still very, very strong. And although I lost to the Rabbitohs, it was pretty bad the other week. And then also you look at last year's one, their loss, where they've got 60 put on them. Coming out this last week, you would have thought they would have put the sword in, but obviously with the Rabbitohs doing that. But yeah, I think the Roosters, they're not in a terrible spot, and they do have some good youngsters coming through. Even Joseph Suaalii might give him a chance to play. There's been some talk about James Tedesco moving into the halves, which I think is absolutely ludicrous. I think that's absolutely crazy. I think your most logical one is Joseph Manu moves into the 5'8" position. You have Sam Walker, Drew Hutchison, someone else, maybe even put those two together, but you chuck them in at the halves. Victor Radler's going to be back as well, and I think he'll do a lot of help for the side in terms of guiding them around. Eventually, you'll get your Cordners and Jake Friends and stuff back too, so there'll be a lot more guidance, a lot more people to help steer the ship around. But yeah, I think you chuck Joey Manu into the 5'8" position. He looked alright last week when he played 5'8". He's looked alright at fullback. Obviously, he's a fantastic player, and him getting his hands on the ball a lot more, I can't see that being a bad thing. Obviously, maybe not like kicking game and stuff, maybe not going to be a strong suit, but at the same time, I feel like his big body, we've seen all the big bodies these days in the 5'8" position, they've been quite damaging. You look at your Jack Whitens and such, and I feel like Joey Manu might be able to do that, might be able to make a dent. I don't think he'll guide them to a premiership by any means. I keep going back to that because I feel like before the season, that's what it was. It was premiership or bust for the Roosters, but I think that's just not going to happen. But in terms of developing players, I think Joey Manu can get a chance in the 5'8" position. I think you then bring in Suaalii in the centres. You have Sam Walker there. I don't necessarily think they need James Maloney. However, if they're able to land it, who knows? Maybe they could win a premiership. Maybe Joey Manu would be his 5'8", Maloney would be the halfback. Who really knows? But that's where I'm going to end this video. Thanks for watching. Leave in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on James Maloney? Do you think he'd be a good signing for the Roosters? Do you even think it's a realistic possibility? Because I'm not even sure that they'd actually be able to do it. I think they'll be able to get an exemption considering the injuries that they've got. However, I don't see it being large enough to land like a James Maloney, especially with his contract at Catalans. You think it'd be pretty big. Plus, living in France, you've got the perk of doing that. However, the prospect of living back in Australia could be too strong. Maybe we'll see James Maloney in the NRL again. Probably not though, but yeah, leave in the comment section below what are your thoughts on it. Also, while you're at it, leave a like on the video as well if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Turn on the notification bell. It's important in terms of just letting you actually be notified that I've uploaded a video, because sub boxes don't necessarily do that. So go ahead, turn on the notification bell. Also, make sure you give me a follow on social media. It's on the screen right now. It's Mr. Luke and YT for the most part. Everything except for Facebook. So my Facebook is just Mr. Luke, but everything else is Mr. Luke and YT. What's on the screen right now. So go ahead, give me a follow, give me a like, give me an ad, do all that sort of stuff. But that's where I'm going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. See yous.